And our first general session presenter is Michael Loy, CEO of North Central Healthcare. Michael has an MBA from UW-Madison, a master's degree in kinesiology from UW-Milwaukee, and a bachelor's degree in health promotion and wellness from our very own UW-Stevens Point. Michael joins us today to speak about the aquatic therapy and large expansion coming to our community. Please give a warm welcome this January morning to Michael Loy.
Well, good morning, everybody. It's a pleasure to be here. I'm grateful to be here with all of you today. As I reviewed the session and the purposes of Good Ideas, it was a program in our community that I was unaware of. But one of my personal lifelong goals is to someday retire and do exactly what you're doing, which is continuing to educate myself and be a lifelong learner because of the importance it has in our communities and certainly in our own health and wellness. So appreciate being here, and hopefully I can entertain and teach you something new today about a really remarkable organization that I have a privilege to work at North Central Healthcare. As Christine said, my goal today is to talk about the work that we're doing at North Central Healthcare and to tell you a story about the renovations and specifically the Aquatic Therapy Pool. And so I'm going to spend a better part of an hour doing that. And as I go through that overview, let me see if I got my slides here. I think that there's a couple important things that I do is any time I speak in the community, or for that matter with county boards that should know who we are and what we do as an organization, it serves everybody well to talk about the history and purpose of our organization. So I will spend a little bit of time doing that today because it matters in the context of where we're going, in the structure and the building and the walls we put around what we're going to do in the future. So I think that will be an important part for us to spend a little bit of time there today. And the first point I have this morning is one of the dreams I have in my role at North Central Healthcare is that I'm a part of a group of people that build an organization that can live long past my life on this earth. And that is a long-term vision because what we do really matters. I didn't know a lot about North Central Healthcare before I went there in 2016, but I purely do not want to imagine a world where we didn't exist. It's a little bit of a mystery of an organization, but there's incredible work being done, and the potential of the organization, the ceiling is still much, much above us. But to build that excellent organization, I think, as in any organization, one of the responsibilities of building an excellent organization is the impact that it has on the community that it serves, both through employment, but the services and the sense of community that a business creates in a community. And I think that's been part of our journey over the last couple of years, certainly as I've been there, is how do we become more outward facing? We are a community organization, but how can we become even more partnered with our community to make this a great place to work, live, and just be a great part of Wisconsin? The second part I just want to touch on is that I'm referring to it as a hero's journey, kind of. And really what I mean by that is that this is a personal journey that I've been afforded the opportunity to be a part of over the last 5 years. So it'll come a little bit from the first person, and that's not to over-embellish my own personal role in that, but really to be as the symbol of the organization and the people working in it that have worked very hard to get us where we're at. So I talk about that because over the last 4 or 5 years, it has been a journey, and there's been tribulations, starting from really the ashes in some senses, and then rising up in terms of what we can do and where we're going as an organization. And we're still building upon that. I'm a very big part of that, but there are a lot of people in our organization that have made that possible and will continue to make that possible. And then the last thing is I talk about building and the structure of North Central Healthcare going forward. The thing that's really important to remember is that as we talk about this $73 million renovation, it's not about the bricks and mortar. It's about the people that come in and out of that building, the sense of community that building creates, and the sense of connection and purpose with the community. And that's what we're trying to accomplish ultimately with our project. I think we're going to do a very good job with that. So I want to start way back, and the history of what we've done in the community goes back into the late 1800s. And really it started with the Marathon County Poor Farm in the 1890s, but shortly thereafter we transitioned to the campus that we're on today in 1893 with the building of the Marathon County Asylum for the Insane. If you recall back to that time, the modes of transportation were not very conducive as they are today. We didn't have the 70-mile-an-hour interstate to Madison, where most families sent individuals with mental illness, developmental disabilities, and sometimes addictions to receive care and treatment in large state institutes. What happened at the time was that counties all over the state of Wisconsin petitioned the state to create and provide funding for localized systems of care, for counties to take care of their residents, and for families to have their family members and loved ones closer to them so that they didn't have to send them off to a state institution and often not see them for a long time because they would have to travel by rail or other means, which would take a very long time to do that. So here in Marathon County, we built the Asylum for the Insane, and obviously the terminology and the approach has changed quite considerably. But if you could see the inside of the pictures or the building, you'd see a very wonderful environment. And asylums are meant to be self-sustaining ecosystems. And what that means is that the people there receiving care and treatment just weren't there as a patient, they were there as a worker. They helped with the livestock and the agriculture that helped feed the staff, and the people that were receiving care and treatment there. There was a lot more than just seeing a practitioner to receive care and treatment. It was a whole kind of community that provided the support for those individuals to be successful in that arrangement. The ghostly figure in the bottom right there is the first administrator for the Asylum for the Insane, and I only show that picture because it's funny that I look exactly like the guy, with the exception of the mustache, which in my entire life I will never be able to grow something like that. But so really a quite remarkable history, and on the bottom you're going to see a timeline, and those are major timelines in the history and the transitions of our organization. I'm not going to touch on each one. I'm going to start in the middle, or in the beginning, the middle, and the end, and there's some other transitive things that happened in the period of that time, but I'm going to stick to the highlights. In 1970 is when the Marathon County Healthcare Center was built here, and that was built as a result of legislation that happened at the federal level. Essentially what was happening was there was a large pushback from communities around the quality of care for individuals with mental health and developmental disabilities. So as President Kennedy came into office, one of his priorities was passing not only the Mental Health Act, but the Developmental Disability Act, the first of which was the Mental Health Act, which was an approach to really federalize mental health care in the United States. So the federal government believed that they could solve the quality issues around mental health care by providing localized funding to counties to best serve their residents because they were most close to them. So the federal government provided one-time capital funding to create community mental health centers, in addition to providing ongoing operating costs for them to be able to operate. The Developmental Disability Act and the funding that came along with that came later, but really that's why the Marathon County Healthcare Center was built in the 1970s, and really where we transformed our campus and really started to evolve in who we are today. So thankful to President Kennedy for that, that we were able to get that resource here in this community. That's why people often refer to us as the healthcare center, is because of that legislation and the bringing of that programming into our community. Such as politics, the state of Wisconsin was not very thrilled that the federal government went bypassing the state in terms of a conduit for funding by going directly to counties. And in 1972, they passed the Chapter 51 Statutes, which is the Mental Health Developmental Disabilities Act here in the state of Wisconsin. What that act did was delegate all of the responsibility, the primary responsibility for the well-being care and treatment for individuals with mental health, addictions, and developmental disabilities from having any responsibility at the state to being a county responsibility. And that was to go with the funding and the priority from the federal government. So in Wisconsin, what happened is that counties were given one of two choices. They could organize themselves as a single county community service program, or they could organize themselves as a multi-county community services program. Here in Marathon County, we were the first multi-county system of care. And the reason for that is because of the healthcare center that was already built here, and having two rural counties north of us in Lincoln and Langlade counties that needed to access those resources and couldn't do it fast enough and couldn't access the level resources they could have otherwise done on their own by working with Marathon County. So that was when the two counties worked with Marathon County to create what is now known as North Central Healthcare. That's when we got our start as that multi-county agreement. Again, we were the first in the state of Wisconsin. There have been many over the years. Most have dissolved over parochial and political issues. There are two others that continue today. In the southwestern corner of the state, both Grant and Iowa counties are combined. And then north of us in Vilas, Oneida, and Forest, they are combined in a multi-county community service program as well. Neither of those two are anywhere near the size and the scope of what North Central Healthcare is. Most states in the United States operate in regional mental health models. That is something that, obviously we're a part of in the approach that we're taking. In the future, I would hope that more counties go that route to access resources. It's a more effective model. And the reason for that is because in Wisconsin, we have 72 counties. And with taking out those 3 multi-county organizations, there are 65 remaining counties, which means there's 68 different mental health systems in the state of Wisconsin, which makes it very difficult for communities and people within those communities to understand the resources. And when you've seen one community service program in the state of Wisconsin, you've truly seen one, because they're all different. And the responsibility delegated from the state is really kind of ambiguous. Essentially, counties are responsible for the emergency crisis care and treatment of individuals with mental health and addiction. And I'll talk about developmental disabilities in a minute. But outside of that, everything really is a choice within available resources. So again, that's why different systems are organized in different ways. And we've certainly evolved ourselves over the years. So I'm going to just take a real quick departure and talk about the choices that we've made as an organization and how we're structured to give you some sense of what we do as an organization. And when I talk about our organization, I generally talk about it within 5 service lines that I think it makes most sense for people to understand what it is that we do. The first of those service lines is what we call our behavioral health services. And essentially, how I describe that is a set of programs and services that if you are in our community and you have a mental health or mental illness and addiction issue and you need access to 24/7 care, those programs serve you in that capacity. Where that starts is with our emergency crisis services. Again, every county has to provide emergency crisis services. When I came into our organization, we did that by professionals, associate level professionals during the business day hours, and at night by telephone. We have moved to a full 24/7 mobile crisis unit where we have 6 to 8 individuals that are out in the community every day assessing individuals that are in crisis situations to get them into access for care. On average, we do about 15 to 20 assessments a day and about 3,000 to 4,000 assessments a year. So you can get some sense of what's happening in our community in terms of mental health crises and needs. Across the state of Wisconsin, most counties don't have that availability of resources and are not organized in that capacity. So, families and other agencies in those communities really struggle to be able to get people at least an assessment and connection to resources. But our emergency and crisis services are truly most often a gateway for people to get into our programs and services. And again, fundamentally, that is the main responsibility of counties to provide that service, as well as to pay for hospitalization if somebody needs to be hospitalized for psychiatric need in your community. In Marathon County and in our tri-county relationship, we are only one of 5 counties that has an inpatient psychiatric hospital. So if you think of all 72 counties in the state of Wisconsin, only 5 of them have a psychiatric hospital. The rest of the counties in the state of Wisconsin rely on the state institutes over in Mendota, which is in Dane County, and Winnebago, which is over in, I believe it's Allegheny County. But those 2 institutes are very large institutes where most of the state sends their individuals that need to be hospitalized. When people are transported to those institutes, it requires a law enforcement official to transport them, which takes people out of their communities to transport people to those institutions. There's a lot of work and discussion around that issue in the state of Wisconsin right now, and there needs to continue to be. The other hospitals, there's a hospital that's county run in Brown County. There's one in Milwaukee County, but they're going to be privatizing that shortly. And then there's one in Fond du Lac, one in Waukesha, and then one in Wood County. But outside of that, again, there are no other inpatient psychiatric hospitals. Our inpatient psychiatric hospital here in Marathon County is a 16-bed unit. It's an adult unit, and it is an acute unit. And what that means is that we bring people in, we stabilize them, and then we get them into a less restrictive form of care. The goal is always to have them be voluntarily engaged in their care and treatment, but that's not always the case as many people come through the court system. So there's a lot I could talk about there, but that's an important facet of what we do and a key part of who North Central Healthcare is. And in addition to that, 16-bed unit. We have, today we have 19 additional, we have 14 people on our inpatient unit today and 19 people out at other state institutes, 6 of which are adolescents and youth. That will come into play later when you see what our construction is trying to address, because we still have a large volume of people out in the community. In addition to those programs, we have our medically monitored treatment program, which is a recovery program. So that's a residential recovery program that started 4 years ago with 5 beds. It's operating at 15-bed level. In the future, that will go to a 30-bed unit. And then we have some youth crisis stabilization, which is essentially a 23-hour stabilization bed. That's what we offer in addition to a crisis CBRF, which is a 12-bed unit to stabilize individuals. There's a lot I could talk about in any of those programs, but that truly is the core of why North Central Healthcare exists, is we were organized around those programs and services and the fundamental responsibility of counties to provide that. Over time, we've added other programs and services to that. The second service line we have is outpatient and community treatment programs, and there's a number of different things we do there. We do outpatient psychiatry, counseling, intensive outpatient day treatment. We have our Hope House and Community Corner Clubhouse, which, you know, there's a lot of detail and explanation that could go into all of those programs, but essentially they're outpatient programs, and truly that is, you know, where the future of mental health care is going. Our third major service line is around developmental disability services. And over the course of the years, in the late 1970s is really when our developmental disability services started as part of our EACH program and the federal legislation that helped enable that. It allowed us to add a wing or another complete section onto our building at that time, and we had a whole gamut of things. If you're on our campus and wonder, why do we have a theater? We used to have a gymnasium, we have an aquatic therapy pool, we used to have a wood shop. All of those things were for programs to help individuals and adults specifically with developmental disabilities have activities and different things for them to be involved in the community and potentially even job training. That's where all those programs started. They've changed over the years, and the responsibility of counties to provide those services has changed with the family care organizations and the managed care organizations that the state has that now is responsible for gaining access to those programs and services. So North Central Healthcare is no longer required to do those things. It is something that we choose to do, and then we do a lot around that for adults. We've gotten out of work that we do with children, but we still do a wide gamut of services for adults, including adult day services, residential, and other activities that we have for adults as well. And then our fourth major service line is really around skilled nursing, and I kind of segregate this into two, and our organization's grown a lot in the last year, and that's why I'm jumping to a fifth service line. One is Mount View Care Center, which is our 200-bed licensed skilled nursing facility. Mount View Care Center is one of the state's largest nursing homes. It's in the top 5, I'm not sure exactly where it lands, but I think it's around number 3. And we also operate in Lincoln County Pinecrest Nursing Home, and that's new as of the first of the year. Pinecrest is also one of the largest nursing homes in the state of Wisconsin. So we operate 2 of the 5 largest nursing homes in the state of Wisconsin, and we are the last 2 county nursing homes north of here. And so there are many other nursing homes that are operated by counties. I believe there's 33 that remain in the state of Wisconsin. A lot of counties have gotten out of the nursing home business because they're not required to do that level of service. And we'll come back to that later in the presentation. But and then we have a couple of other things that we do. Of course, aquatic therapy, our aquatic therapy program, which really doesn't fit in a service line, but you'll see that come into the integration with Mount View Care Center. We do adult protective services, which is guardianships and placements, and then demand transportation. So there's a lot that North Central Healthcare does. We have, as we go into 2020, we have about 1,000 employees. When I started 4 years ago, we had around 800, so we've grown a lot there. Our operating revenue when we started 4 years ago was around $64 million. In 2020, our operating budget's $90 million, and we cover 5,000 square miles throughout our 3-county area and have 21 different locations, with our 22nd location coming on in mid this year of 2020. So there's a lot about North Central Healthcare that people are always surprised about. You know, we have our infrastructure, our buildings, but we really do most of our work out in the communities, in people's homes, in schools, jails, and all the other places that you could imagine we go to help serve people. So I talked about the service lines and really the structure of what we do. All of those programs and services are located in various different locations, but the primary flagship for us is our main campus. It's 500,000 square feet, and the last major renovation that we had there was in 1985, and so it's been almost 40 years and a lot to be addressed. So now I want to spend a little bit of time about, circling back to my journey. In 2016, I was the Human Resources Executive for North Central Healthcare. And at that time, there was a large push from one of our three counties, Marathon County, to really look at whether or not it made sense to remain a multi-county organization. Many of you probably read about that, and it's an exercise that I think any county that was engaged in a multi-county arrangement would examine. In our history, it seems to happen every about 10 years where it gets really looked at. And what happened in early 2019 is that we lost connection in partnership with our counties to help see our success as their success and vice versa. And there needed to be focus on aligning our efforts to go forward to really meet evolving needs in the community as care and service and needs have changed. And so 2016 started out really as a challenging year for us, and there was a threat that loomed throughout the year about whether or not the Tri-County Agreement, so that is the document that creates our organization and the partnership between the three counties, whether or not that would continue to be an arrangement that Marathon County would want to be a part of, and if that were to dissolve, then that organization would effectively no longer exist. And Marathon County and the other two partners would have to scramble to be able to create a new system of care. So that's what I walked into as the board in 2016 in February asked me to be the interim CEO. Our previous CEO had announced that he was going to retire, and through that process, we were recruiting another CEO. Our board put a stop to that given the uncertainty of the future of our organization. It had been challenging to recruit somebody and asked me to step into that position. One individual that's in the room today is Gene Bergner. Gene Bergner was our vice chair at the time of our board, and I remember very distinctly the meeting in which Gene gave me the charge to lead this organization going forward, and the opportunity and privilege that has been. But I can tell you that 2016 was definitely a challenging year to navigate, to get to a new agreement. But we were successful in doing that, and that was a new 5-year agreement. Why that's important is that all of the things that we do are predicated upon, again, that partnership. And as we got that done, the thing that we knew we had to do going forward was to set a really compelling vision that we could regain the faith of our counties and get the investment that we needed in our organization to do the things that we saw were on our horizon and that things that needed to be addressed. So as we went into 2017, it was our 45th anniversary as a multi-county partnership as North Central Healthcare. And so we laid out a vision that I call our 5 to 50 vision. And it was a fun play on the timeline, which was over the next 5 years, what are the things that we need to do as an organization to achieve operational excellence and long-term viability to set this organization up for the next 50 years? Because we needed to take a long-term perspective because we knew the investment in our organization was going to have to be pretty substantial given the age of our capital and our infrastructure that we had. Again, most of our building was 40 years old. And if we would go through the county process of getting that updated at a piecemeal, one-off basis, it would have taken decades to update the building, and it would have never been done in a way that would have really opened up opportunities or respond to the changing community's needs. So we laid out that vision in 2017, and we've been working a part of that. Obviously, that started with a reframing of our mission, vision, and values and who we were as an organization and what we were going to become. We wanted to have financial viability as an organization, to have choice. And I talk about this a lot in our organization, that when we talk about financials, it's not to have some profit. It is to have the resources available to expand programming, to be able to expand investment in our staff. And we've been doing that over the last couple of years as our organization has grown, and that's been very important for us. The third major thing that we wanted to really look at was how we manage tax levy. If your elected officials in the county have not been openly talking about the challenges that levy limits present to county governments, it is a pressing issue because the cost to continue amount of operating government is often in excess of their ability to levy taxes for that. So it is a constant evolution of thoughtful deconstruction for governments to reinvent themselves. And over the last 10 to 15 years, all the low-hanging fruit has been really taken out. And so now it's starting to impact real programs and services. What that means for North Central Healthcare is that out of our $90 million budget for next year, about $7 million of that is county tax levy. So we are very well diversified in terms of our funding sources. That's not true of other counties' community service programs. But the option for us to go back to our counties to fund our programs and services just isn't there because for their ability to maintain their contribution for us is going to be a challenge. So we have to be innovative and look at different ways that we can create opportunities for us as an organization. Again, we knew we needed to invest in bricks and mortar, and there were a number of things that were key about that, and then plan for unexpected changes in healthcare. Healthcare is one of the most dynamic industries right now, and it is changing incredibly for us. Every time we think we know what we're doing or where we're going, there is changes that happen, and really strategy and operational planning longer than a year doesn't really make much sense right now because we have to be so agile to respond. A prime example of that is when I started at North Central Healthcare in 2016, we operated at 235 beds in Mount View Care Center. This week, we're operating at 170 beds. It's not because people don't want to come to our organization. It's because healthcare is changing. It's changing because people that are coming in for rehab are there for, on average, 15 days versus 100 days. It's a change because people for long-term care are aging in place and having other options in the community, which is fundamentally a good thing, but it changes the dynamic and the nature of our organization. So that's a good example of how healthcare is changing and disrupting how we provide services to the community, and certainly makes it difficult to do something as bold as a $73 million project because you just don't know exactly what's going to look like in the future. And so it's important for us to anticipate that as we do our planning. So a little bit of history then in terms of the project itself and the scope of what we're doing. The project itself, or the campus, as I said, was built in 1972. The Aquatic Therapy Pool, which is a major pinnacle piece of our project, was built in 1976. So yes, that's over 40 years ago. Our master facility process. So one of the things that I took on as soon as we had our new Tri-County agreement that was approved in December of 2016. On that day, I spent my morning in Langlade County getting it approved, drove to Lincoln County to have it approved, and then finished my day at Marathon County having it approved. It was a proud day. We celebrated the achievement of the year that we were able to get that new agreement, but we knew that we needed to move quickly on some key things that were lingering. One of those key things that were lingering was the future of the Aquatic Therapy Pool. The Aquatic Therapy Pool, as I said, started in 1976 as a program for adults with developmental disabilities. And all it is a warm water pool by virtue of turning up the temperature. That's all the difference is. But that pool was built that way and is operated that way because for adults with developmental disabilities that don't have a high movement, they get cold very quickly. It makes perfect sense. It's the same reason why my children at the YMCA swim in the warm water pool. They don't move as much as adults do in exerting energy, so they don't keep their body temperature as well. So that operated that way for many, many years. In the late 1990s, the county, Marathon County, is not required to provide aquatic therapy programming to its community. We might be the only county in the United States that provides that service. And again, the history of that you can understand of how it got there. But over time, it started to rely on county tax levy to operate in that status. So there was a big push to transition the aquatic therapy pool to a therapy-based program where we could bill for revenue and have a therapy program to help sustain the cost of operating the pool. That evolution and change occurred over the next decade, and the county said, we will look at building a new pool if you can make your way to being off of county tax levy and be able to pay for a new pool through your operations. So that was better part of a decade to make that shift. In the late 2000s, a group organized themselves as the Warm Water Works group, which was an advocacy group that wanted to really see the aquatic therapy pool not only not close, but have a future and then be supported. So the future of the aquatic therapy pool has been a community issue for well over 10 years for all of you that may have familiarity for it. So as we turn the corner on the page in 2017, one of the things that was first on my list is I needed to decide as the CEO of the organization whether or not I wanted to get behind that project. If I didn't get behind that project, I think it would have languished. But if I were to get behind it, we were either going to get it done or not. But it was an issue that was out there that just needed to have resolution because of the age of the facility and the advocacy group that was pushing for it, and then how it set itself up against other future building needs that we needed to address that, quite frankly, are bigger in the scope of community impact in many respects and the county's core responsibilities. So the pool was, pretty low on the county's priority list. So in January of 2017, we talked with the board. We analyzed the issue, all the work that had been done, and our board of directors really recommended a specific design of the pool and for us to move forward with the capital campaign and get the county to be able to address that. So work started to begin on what we needed to do after that. And as we were doing that, again, there's this broader need of what we need to do on our campus. In April of that year, I went to the board of directors and said, we really need to think about this in a comprehensive approach. We can't just put a new pool on our campus without consideration of all the things that we need to do first and long term, because we may put a pool and then design a whole campus and say, why did we ever put that pool there? Because it just doesn't make sense. So our board of directors in 2017 approved funding for us to go out and do a master facility plan. And essentially the goals of that project were to tell us two things. One was, can you physically do a comprehensive overhaul of this campus and still operate? And then the second part of that question is can you pay for that without tax levy, and how much can you pay for, and how much will be available for that project? And what can it kind of look like? So that project took the better part of a year. And at the end of that, we determined that yes, you can do this in a comprehensive way. Yes, you can do it in a way that you won't have to ask taxpayers to pay for money, because the operational efficiencies and the additional revenue that you'll be able to get by virtue of creating a new care environment should be able to pay for the debt related to that service. And we believe that you can have about $73 million to do that project. That includes the Aquatic Therapy Pool at about $6 million. So in April of 2018, that recommendation, and I'll show you here what that looked like. That was the initial concept for those that are familiar with our campus. The gray aspect of the rendering there are the current parts of our building, and the white parts of the building are the additions. So it was a different concept that again told us it could work. Obviously the phasing and the detail work needed to come, and we could have $73 million to accomplish that project. So that was just basically an idea and a financial analysis. So we took that to the Marathon County Board in 2018 in April and asked them to approve moving forward with that bonding resolution. They approved it, and in June of 2018 is when they approved that bonding resolution for $73 million, $3 million of which was slated for the Aquatic Therapy Pool, and then they told me I had 6 months to raise $3 million to pay for the remainder of the Aquatic Therapy Pool. At that meeting, I remember relating my experience to a recent touchdown throw that Aaron Rodgers made in Detroit, which was a Hail Mary. Thankfully, Richard Rodgers caught it, and we won that game. So we embarked from there with two objectives. One was the capital campaign for the Aquatic Therapy Pool, and then the second was the master facility planning transitioning actually into architectural design and engineering. So we issued an RFP over the summer of 2018 when we signed our architect and design firm in September of 2018, and then we started all of our actual design work over the period of the next 9 to 10 months, which is a very rigorous process. You have to examine all of the things that you do as an organization, all the things you think you're going to do going forward, and took many, many hours for us to accomplish that. The Aquatic Therapy Pool, again, was a part of that. And I found 14 ways not to design your building. And every time we would get into an iteration, it was like, yes, this makes sense. But if you asked me today and I could start fresh, I'd probably design the building even differently than what we bid it out. It's just things change and your perspective changes. But I think we ultimately got to where we wanted to be, which was we got to a project where we could minimize the amount of phases, minimize the amount of moves, and do it within our $73 million budget. and get it done by the time we'd be celebrating our 50th anniversary in 2022. And so that was a goal and a checklist that we were very happy about being able to accomplish. Now back to that capital campaign that I talked about as being a Hail Mary. There's a lot of work that had been done prior to picking that up on the 6-month timeline. Obviously, the Aquatic Therapy Pool has impacted people's lives tremendously in this community. The people that use it, the advocacy group that supports it, is the story that got that project done. I was a facilitator of going out in the community and speaking to people about it and framing the way that they can get involved. But the story was there, the impact of the community was already there, and it was really a remarkable couple months to be part of that process, to see how progressive and wonderful this community is, that when we have an idea that positively impacts the lives of people and makes this community unique and special, that people in funding and philanthropy can get behind that to get it done in this community in a relatively short order. So I'm eternally grateful for that, and just ultimately humbled to be part of a community that would care that much and to be able to do that project and capital campaign. So over that 6-month period, we actually finished in about 4 months, and we raised, I think it's just shy of $3.4 million in total funding. We had 4 major donors, and they really made the wave, paid the wave. Really, again, it was an incredible project because at the end of the day, there were, I think, just shy of 600 people that donated to that project. Yes, there were the big $500,000 donors, but there were people that gave $40. And they're part of it as much as the people that gave the $500,000 because they did the things like talking to their friends and family members and advocating, bake sales, and all the things that could help to get the word out about the pool. So tremendous thing to be a part of. And one of the reasons that I got behind it was, of course, the stories of the impacts of the people that, it impacted. But secondly is I went and used it myself. So I had an unfortunate wakeboarding accident in 2017, and I needed physical therapy to rehab my foot. And so I said, this is a great opportunity for me to see if this is snake oil. And so I went in, eyes wide open, and rehabbed my foot, worked with our physical therapist there. I can tell you that it would be the first place I would go to receive my therapy, especially for older adults in the community, because the aquatic therapy pool and the treatment in there is very beneficial to healing. One primary reason is that the natural buoyancy of the water allows you to be more aggressive with your treatment. So as I'm rehabbing my foot, if I need to ease up, it's very easy to lift weight off my foot. It's very easy to adjust the weight that I'm putting on my foot. And if I were to lose my balance and fall, obviously there's no secondary injury that I'm at risk for. The second piece is that the warm water creates a natural circulation or increases circulation and peripheral circulation, which helps healing. And it actually feels good to be in the pool as you're doing that. And the third reason is that it just really was a fun environment to be a part of. There's a lot of people in the pool. A lot of people are just trying to maintain independence. There are people literally that come to the pool every week that if we're closed and they come back the week after, you can see it in their body. And without that pool, they would not be able to function and remain independent in the community. So it is a remarkable asset that we have in this community. I would encourage all of you to use it if you have a need for therapy for those reasons. And when we get into our new building, all of the things that are a challenge from a physical aesthetic standpoint and navigation, I think will definitely be accommodated, and it's going to be a wonderful facility that I'll give you some previews on here in a little bit. So that's where we were earlier this, well, that was last year now already, in terms of the project and where we go going forward. So we have the design done. The design was taken to the county board to show them. We did the community engagement. Through the community engagement, the relationship that we have with our neighborhood is very important. And we did spend time adjusting the plan to accommodate their needs. As we went into the project, the one piece that I want to overview today is what were the things that we wanted to lay out that we wanted to accomplish a part of that $73 million project and a part of the design. And I want to cover them for you today because, again, the building is the bricks and mortar, but it's all the intention, it's the people, it's the things you put inside of it that you have to be very thoughtful about when you get done. And this is a community building. Most people will use North Central Healthcare's programs and services either for themselves or a family member at some point in your life. I believe it touches everybody and every family in this community and has the potential to in the future. So we want to be very thoughtful about that. So from our perspective, some of the project goals for us, there were 8 or so that I laid out, maybe more than that, that I laid out prior to the project before we even started putting things on paper. Like, what did I want this building to accomplish? What problems did I want it to solve for our organization and our community? The first on our list was to have efficient clinical operations. Over the years, as our programs have changed and grown or closed or added, we have put people where we had office space. And it doesn't make sense for people coming into our organization where to go. And it doesn't make sense that we have the same program located in 4 different spaces in 4 different parts of the building. And we don't have like programs organized by each other. So, when you go into Aspirus, you go into their cancer, center or their wing, because all the things that they need to serve that patient are organized in that way. So we needed to think the same way. We wanted to make very thoughtful choices about points of access. So people didn't have to worry about if I need to be in community treatment, in the CSP program or the CCS program. Don't worry about those acronyms. All I need to do is go in this door and say, I have a mental illness or an addiction and I need help, and you're in the right place. That was the goal for us, and then to get clinical operations to be able to function in a more seamless, integrated network of getting people to operate outside of silos. That was a very important consideration for us. The second major implication that we had was to improve wayfinding, security, and access. A couple of things here that I want to point out. I just talked about access and the importance of people's ability to get into the organization. Access comes in one of 3 ways in our current world. There is the front door, there's the digital front door, so our website, and then there's the phone that some people still use, which gets into our organization. So we want to be thoughtful about how people get into our organization, especially from a physical standpoint. From a physical standpoint, on our campus, and this goes into security, we have 113 external doors. If you think about, unfortunately, the world we live in today, and if you think back to one of the first things I had to deal with as a CEO in May of 2016, which is what we refer to as a Dr. Black incident, which was basically that somebody believes there is an individual, a dangerous individual on our campus with a weapon. When that happened in 2016, our inability to close down our building quickly necessitated a very large response that was largely unnecessary. There was no person on our campus at that time. It was a systems failure. It was unfortunate. That was related to the age of the building. But in this world today, it can't take 3 to 4 hours to lock down our building. It's unacceptable. We still have not largely solved that problem. We've put a lot of intermediate solutions into that. But in this new building, it was a priority of mine that we could lock down this building in under a minute. And I think we'll be able to accomplish that, which is really great. And as it relates to wayfinding, I did a video to help the county board understand the current challenges with the building. In that video, I walked from one end of the campus to the other. It took me 15 minutes. And the maze that you go through of dark, long hallways is not conducive, especially for individuals that are aging that might have visual challenges. And we really wanted to get that down. In the future of the building that I'll show you in a little bit, there are 3 main doors that are predominantly, they're prominent on the campus. There's 1 main entrance, 3 public doors, 1 hallway on the front of the building that connects that. So if you go in the wrong door, it's not going to take you 15 minutes. It may take you 5 minutes to get to the very end, to the other end. In that design, there's the on-stage element where the public goes, and everything else is off-stage in the back, so we don't have laundry carts and food carts going down the main hallways, which create safety issues, but that allows us to be a safer and more navigable campus. The third element was to incorporate evidence-based design. This is a very important one for us, and very important in both the nursing home and the inpatient psychiatric hospital. When our inpatient psychiatric hospital was built, the contemporary practice at that time was that individuals could share a room, and we have rooms where there can be 2 or 4 individuals in a room. Think about yourself, and think about if you or your family member were in a psychotic episode, and you had to share a room with somebody else that was either dealing with an addiction or a psychotic episode. It is not an environment for healing. And for us as an organization, as a challenge, When we have individuals that are dangerous, maybe potentially to others, and need to be on a no roommate situation, we lose beds and therefore have to send people outside the community, which is not a good result and drives financial impacts to our organization. And so our new building will have 16 private rooms. It'll be a much safer unit, and I think it will be a much more healing unit. One of the additions is that people will finally be able to go outside while they're on their inpatient unit. I don't know about you, but if I couldn't go outside for 2 weeks being on an inpatient unit, I might have some mental health issues of my own. It's important to get outside and get fresh air. And then as it relates to our nursing home, we do have some individuals in rooms that share bathrooms. And again, I don't know about you or what you hope for your family and loved ones, but that may have been okay in the past, but no longer in the future is that okay, and especially from an infection control standpoint. So we wanted to incorporate, evidence-based design. There's a lot more thought that goes into that. We literally built one of the 96 new nursing home rooms as a mock-up and had all of our staff and residents go through it. And we completely changed the design from the first time we designed it to the second because of how it supported the care environment. And I think that was really an important consideration for us. The fourth element is to support higher acuity care. I alluded a little bit to this earlier, where more people are aging in place in nursing homes and why they're getting smaller. And then, as it relates to our inpatient psychiatric unit, why it's not okay for people to share rooms today is because the acuity or the level of need that the people that we're treating has gone up considerably. What we used to treat in the nursing home and care for is nowhere near where we are today. We are literally becoming a micro hospital, and that will continue to shift as we have higher and higher needs to care for our residents. We're talking about whether or not there needs to be on-site dialysis and IVs that we need to support IV drug users. I mean, they are complicated issues that were typically not a part of nursing homes in the past, which is a challenging shift. And then in our clinical areas in the behavioral health world, we're not dealing with people with a generalized anxiety disorder, depression. It's kind of the primary driving thing. They might be secondary and they might be part of it. We're dealing with people that have major depressive disorder, schizophrenia, who also use methamphetamine or an opiate, and that is a complicated patient. There are many other providers in the community that do kind of the block and tackling of mental health of those types of generalized disorders, but the complex stuff is where we sit. The fifth element there is to deinstitutionalize and then also provide flexibility. I talked a lot about cinder block walls. Cinder block walls are good if we wanted to be a tornado shelter. It is not good for the future because it needs to support Wi-Fi and the ability to have connected devices to help support the care environment. And also it makes it very expensive to change the care environment as changes happen over time. So we wanted to build a building that would be flexible. The sixth element is to operate more efficiently. There is fundamentally, when you get down to it and you reorganize our whole campus, there's about 30 or 40% of excess space we're eliminating in our new footprint that was just not adding value. Those are footsteps that add costs. Those are heating, cooling, physical plant costs. We're in about 60 to 70% less of a footprint that we are in today in the future. And obviously there's dollars involved in that, and you can just operate more efficiently. We have an opportunity to improve our regulatory compliance. We're not out of compliance, but we can definitely advance ourselves there. And the second to last issue is around excellent training spaces. One of the things I do here in the community is I'm a member of the Wausau Chamber Region, or the Wausau Region Chamber of Commerce. And part of the work that we're doing there is around the economic development plan, supporting that. And a couple things that are important about that is, we're looking at how can we increase the level of talent in the community, placemaking, and then have innovative industries in this community so that we continue to grow and have an economically viable community. I can tell you the only thing I'm really truly concerned about in that I think is determinative of our future as a community is whether or not we can bring more belly buttons and more people into this community. If we don't have net new migration into this community from other communities to have a workforce, it is going to impact everything we do. I was at a restaurant last night picking up some dinner for my family, and they had this new innovative space where they're going to do this new type of restaurant experience. And I said, well, when is that opening? And they said, well, as soon as we can find the busser, the cook, and the people to do the prep work, and we don't know when it's going to open because we can't find people to open it. That is present in all businesses almost now in this community. And for us as an organization, we may have to make choices in the future about what our priorities and what do we staff first. Outside of that, the things that we can do, to obviously support bringing people into this community by making a great place to live and work is important for all of us to be behind. But as an organization, what we need to focus on is how do we attract and retain staff that we need to be able to serve our mission. Part of the way that we're able to retain and attract people is by providing high quality education experience. People don't come to jobs anymore and stay 30 years. That's not typically the experience people have. How that impacts us in a high acuity, complex care environment is that experience and tenure matters because people need to learn how to deal with complex patients. And it takes time, training, experience to do that. And if we don't invest in training and people are coming in and out of our organization every 3 to 5 years, we're setting ourselves up to put ourselves in a position not to have high quality care. So we have to invest in education to attract people and then to keep them in our organization and have this philosophy that we have, which is that we are a learning organization and you can come and have a career of opportunity to grow both from your skill set and economically by staying in our organization and having clear career paths to be able to contribute and be part of this organization long term. And that's an important piece for us. So we are really focusing on how do we bring educational environments into our organization so that they get exposure, that we can do some training in support of those education programs so that they are successful, but that we have the availability of the workforce that we need in the future. One key component of that is the Central Wisconsin Psychiatry Residency Program. The Medical College of Wisconsin 5 or 6 years ago made a key investment to expand rural psychiatry in the state of Wisconsin by opening 2 residency programs, one in Green Bay and one in Wausau. In addition to having the Medical College of Wisconsin here, which is going to redefine this community, it already has, but 10 to 20 years from now, you will appreciate what that will have done for our community in terms of the changes in the world that we're experiencing. But the residency program is very similar and on par with that. We are very fortunate to have that here in central Wisconsin because about 80% of psychiatry residents tend to stay where they train. So we started implementing that 3 years ago, and our program has 3 residents per year. It's separated into 4 years of training. It's a PGY 1, 2, 3, and 4. We have our PGY 3 set up, so that means we have 9 out of 12 residents practicing, and we've got 1 more year to implement before we're at full scale next year. And we'll have 12 psychiatry residents here on our campus in central Wisconsin learning how to provide community mental health and addiction services. And that is going to be, again, redefining for our community. In that first class that we are just trying to hire, I've hired 2 out of Green Bay to come here to serve on our inpatient unit that will start in July of 2021. And I've got to offer out to one of our outpatient psychiatrists. So that could be 3 people out of that first class that are going to be here in this community right out of the bat. That is key to who we are as an organization. But for us as an organization, it required a huge investment, not only in our facilities, but in growing psychiatry. We had 1 when I started, a psychiatrist. We have a mix, we'll have a mix of 10 psychiatrists next year to support the training and education. But that alone has been the most redefining thing about our organization. And we've struggled at times to reorientate ourselves to be physician-led and professionally managed, but it is an important investment as it relates to training and supporting that going forward. And then lastly is quality workspaces. People don't want to work in an office with no window and cinder block walls 8 hours a day. It's not good for anybody. And so there's people stuck in all sorts of corners of our organization that just no longer need to be there anymore. And from the county's perspective, they wanted quality care to maintain or improve, be financially sustainable, and then offer a comprehensive approach for the county. The county is going through its own master facility planning with all of its facilities all throughout the county. And by virtue of us freeing up some of our space and some of their space needs, I believe in the future that there may be uses for the parts of the campus that will be vacating. All right, so this is an aerial view, and I've got a cool drone video, but the file size of it was just enormous, so I couldn't embed it in the presentation. But we have a wonderful campus on the shores of Lake Wausau that has a view of Rib Mountain and Granite Peak. We really appreciate where we are. We're situated on 13 acres, again, 500,000 square feet all told. But you can kind of see the general layout. It'd be too difficult to describe it, but I think the impression that you can get is, wow, that's pretty expansive. There's a lot of space there. And if you can just kind of ingrain that in your head a little bit, I'm going to flip to what the future state is going to look like with our campus. So it's really, okay, I'll go back, and then I'll go forward. So very different. If you look down in the bottom left corner, that building will largely stay the same. And then what's really remarkable that I think impressionable that you'll get right out of the gate is that Starting under the support area here, I think I got a pointer, in the middle of the campus, everything below that, we currently operate in all this space. We no longer will operate in any of that space in the future. We're vacating a very, very large space to move into our new operations. Essentially, all of our operations then will be contained in this circular area. Again, there's one main entrance with a circular drive. You've got our crisis CBRF, which is going to go from a 12-bed to a 16-bed. That's one of our first projects. A 8-bed youth hospital. I talked about today we have 6 youth that are hospitalized outside of our community. We will be the only county in the state of Wisconsin that has its own 8-bed youth hospital. 49 out of 72 counties in the state of Wisconsin don't even have a child and adolescent psychiatrist, let alone an inpatient psychiatric unit for youth and adolescents. This is a huge part of the value that we're going to offer to the community. You see the lighter green areas are the building that are going to really retain the outside 4 walls. And then you have your new 4-story nursing tower, which would be brand new build, and then new Aquatic Therapy Center. I'm going to go through the phasing because I think that will make the most sense for you to understand kind of what's happening in each area. So the initial bidding for the first phase of our project was just under about a $10 million bid. And that included our youth hospital, our new crisis CBRF, and that was a separate kind of sub-bid, as well as our new central utility plant and our aquatic therapy pool. Yep. And I really was surprised and happy that we were able to come in under budget on that first phase, and that's really important for us in our total project cost. That project kicked off in August, starting with the aquatic therapy pool. The total project for those phases in phase 1A are going to take about 6 to 12 months. To necessitate these projects to begin, the aquatic therapy pool was in a green space, so we were able to start that right away. Same for the youth hospital and the crisis CBRF. So we didn't have to change anything on our campus for this first phase or move anybody at that point. So jump ahead. This was our historic groundbreaking in August for the pool. So we were rained out for part of it. I think I risked people's lives. There was lightning in the area, but we persisted. It was a very symbolic day of the just the challenge and the turbulence of the aquatic therapy pool. But we did have a celebration. Peter DeSantis, who unfortunately passed away at the end of last year, was there and spoke and talked about, he was our original first CEO and talked about the importance of the pool. And it was really a wonderful event. That was kind of stalled at different periods. But we kicked things off in August. This is a better view of getting some ground moved. That was really sometime mid-fall this year. You see my daughter, Josephine, and I at the groundbreaking. She was excited about the hard hat and all the action that was happening on our campus. But here you see the makings of our new aquatic therapy pool. Again, this was sometime in the fall as we started to excavate and prep for the concrete as we're moving forward. Ultimately, that's what the inside of the aquatic therapy pool is going to look like. So if I jump back, you can see the swim lane here, right here. And then here is the pool with it naturally getting deeper. So somehow, and it's just amazing to me how we're able to get there to here. This is a concrete delivery to put in the bottom of the pool, which is remarkable. I've never seen anything like that. So every day I park right next to the fence and I walk by and I just check out what's happening. And it's fun to be part of it. Every month or so I get out there and actually walk the site with a hard hat on. But this is pretty incredible how they pump concrete through that. I don't know. To me, it defies all laws of physics and concrete. But they do it. So that resulted in this. So now you can see the inside of the aquatic therapy pool. This was probably about a month ago, and so you can see the bottom of it. This was before the snow. Unfortunately, we didn't have the roof on before the snow came down, but it was in progress, so you can see that there. That's, again, what it'll look like in the future, so you can kind of get a sense of how it's coming together. The view, that view is southeastern facing. It's going to be incredible in terms of the windows and the light that comes into that building. This is a picture I took yesterday that I could just update you. So the roof is on. They're actually installing some of the windows and we'll be doing some of the interior work here shortly. And that's what that's going to look like as we open up in April of this year. So we're very excited. This is the view from outside. It has its own separate entrance and it will be the first part of our project that's completed. This here is our new youth hospital. So that was taken about a month ago or so when we had the concrete work done prior to the snow. This is a picture of it yesterday. So a new building going up, so that'll be that 8-bed youth hospital. That's slated to open in June of next year, along with the new CBRF as well. Phase 1B is our new 4-story skilled nursing tower. So we'll operate 176 skilled nursing beds in this new project. 96 of those beds are going to be in a new skilled nursing tower. The first floor, that's going to be a community area. Second floor, ventilator unit. Third floor, rehab and long-term care. Fourth floor, dementia care. And then we'll have a connector to the current Mount View Care Center building, where on the second floor, we'll have more dementia care programs. So Mount View Care will be in different areas. So one thing that's remarkable about this project is everybody's going to move once. Very few people are going to move twice. To have this happen, we did have to relocate 50 residents in one day, and we did it 2 hours. It was pretty incredible, and it went very smooth, and we're going to be demoing space to get that done here. That project will look like this when it's all said and completed. There's going to be a bistro for people in the community to stop in, but really a wonderful building and really a pinnacle to our campus going forward that we'll be able to build around. That should be up and running by the end of 2021. Phase 2 is once that tower's done, we'll clear out the current Mount View Care Center building and then do internal renovations. We'll clear out everything so you can see it in number 2. Ultimately, our new administration, second floor of the nursing home will be renovated, and our new outpatient clinic will be in that space, so we'll be able to be completely out of it, renovate it, and then move back in. And that's the incredible part. Most of this project happens with people outside of the space, so it's not occupied, which is going to make it really wonderful to go forward. Phase 3 is updating our hospital. That should take 9 to 12 months. And then phase 4 is some just site work that we need to do at the end. Again, this should wrap up in 2022. It is absolutely remarkable that we are doing this in largely unoccupied space and in 4 phases. That took an incredible amount of planning and phasing. So that is a quick overview of the project. We are waiting on a fly-through video. If you're interested in the project and the Aquatic Therapy Pool, of course, we anticipate a groundbreaking in April and hope that you can come out for that as that gets up and running. But as the project continues to unfold and develop, we have a website landing page for all things related to the project. We have a continuously live video feed, so if you really want to see what's happening today, you can jump on and see that. We'll do time-lapse videos so you can see the evolution of the campus, and we'll be sure to share more pictures and renderings of the future state and fly-throughs of the new building as they become available as we finalize design throughout this year and then the construction over the next couple of years. So with that, I've got a very few couple minutes to answer a couple questions before we get you on to your other programs. Yes, sir.
You mentioned more psychiatrists.
Yeah.
How about children's psychiatry?
So the question was about the addition of psychiatry and whether or not we have child and adolescent psychiatrists. We have 4 child and adolescent psychiatrists that are currently here, 1 full-time, and then the other 3 are part-time. As we get the hospital online, we're going to have to add an additional one. That's our goal for this next year. And then we do have a resident that's interested in child and adolescent psychiatry, but she probably will go do her fellowship outside the community. Hopefully, maybe she'll come back, but that's what we have today. And our goal is to have 2, which would be pretty remarkable given other counties. Anybody else? Okay, I think we're...
Wait, we got one.
Oh, you do? Okay.
Just a question about your decor for the people who are living there. Does each unit, not bedroom, but hallway or unit, have a different plan and color scheme?
No, I don't believe so. I think they'll have their own individual elements, and certainly from a wayfinding and designation and naming they will. But that's one of the things we wanted to be very thoughtful about is if you want flexibility, they have to be very similar. But we'll be very thoughtful about design. I can tell you that my role in that is you guys figure it out and show me it, and I'll tell you if I like it or I don't like it, because that's not my world.
Apparently, it is really beneficial to have each hallway a different color, because sometimes that's the only way the patients can identify where their room is.
Yep.
And it's very important.
No, it's a very good point. There will definitely be elements that will help with that. Okay. All right. Well, again, thank you. It's an honor. I'm grateful to be here today. If you have any questions, let me know. Thanks.